Margaret Sanger, champion of truth, justice, and equality.
And Vin fact checks PolitiFacts. Let's talk about it, y'all. Alright, well, we had a fireside a couple days ago. And as you can see in the Vin and BM fan fireside, you can check it yourself. And then there were some comments. One of the things that's a principle for me, especially when you call on the fireside, look, we want you to call in, we want you to state your opinion and all that, but if you make a fact claim, you're going to be asked to back it up with sources. I mean, that's the standard I hold myself to. We've always done that in fireside. So there I was naively thinking, well, I made a statement about Margaret Sanger being a racist and an avowed racist. And so I naively assumed that just because I put a actual source to my claim, because that's how you do research. This number one rule of the press, right, is you look for source documentation. That's always going to be king, not what other people said about what the person believed, but what the person actually said out of their own mouth, or in this case, their own pen.
Right.
So there I was, Sori, naively thinking that I could just quote Miss Sanger and let her speak for herself. But did you know that there is a group of people who know more about Margaret Sanger's intention than Margaret Sanger?
She knows about herself.
That's right. PolitiFact. This is a strange thing now where PolitiFact somehow trumps source documentation. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not how you do research. I then asked the brother, I said, did they address the article in question? Answer, no. They barely quoted her. Actually, they quoted her and misquoted her simultaneously in the article. I'll show you that in a second.
Right.
So what we're going to do now in Middle America is we're going to take a walk, a little trek down memory lane in regard to Margaret Sanger, her views on race, and all the rest of it. But first and foremost, let's go to the actual PolitiFact article. Here it is right here. And you're going to be able to see the article right here. It was in regard to Ben Carson made a statement. Hey, Margaret Sanger wanted to eliminate black people. People like me should be eliminated. Okay? And then he went on to say, well, he's talking about African Americans. And so PolitiFact, who's somehow the completely unbiased, complete automatons who are just there to process facts, judge this as a false statement. And if you look at their conclusions, you can see right here, our ruling, as if there's some sort of ex cathedra magisterial authority about reality in the world. Our ruling, Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson said that birth control activist Margaret Sanger believed that people like me should be eliminated. He later clarified that he meant African Americans. While Sanger indeed supported the eugenics movement, substantial evidence shows that she was not racist, and in fact, worked closely with black leaders and healthcare professionals. See that there? She worked closely with black people. That's like the perennial, what? I can't be racist. Half my friends are black, can't be racist. Okay,
my husband's black.
So there we are. They're talking about how awesome Margaret Sanger was actually as far as race relation goes. Sanger was far ahead of her times in terms of opposing racial segregation, wrote Baker, a history professor at Goucher College, in an email. This is the documentation of PolitiFact.
No.
Some dude in a college writes an email.
Yeah.
And that trumps what the woman said herself. Okay, all right. She worked closely with black leaders to open birth control clinics in Harlem and elsewhere. You don't say.
She had a very specific reason why she did that.
So Miss Sanger, okay, so let me put this together. Miss Sanger is not a racist because this dude from a college wrote an email and said, hey, she was against segregation and she worked very closely with black people to open up birth control clinics.
I think that it's weird that this PolitiFacts place even was quoting this random guy from a college rather than quoting her herself.
Yeah, why would they do? Well, you know what, babe? They did quote her actually, so I don't want to misrepresent the big homie, Miss Sanger.
Oh, gosh.
So here's when they actually quote Miss Sanger in the article. Those who point a finger at Sanger as a racist often cite a particular statement in claiming she harbored ill will toward black people. in a December 10th, 1939 letter. Now there's a hyperlink to a website, so you can read the letter as a whole. But unfortunately, that website is a 404, not found.
Not
so,
found.
in that particular,
Well, that's weird.
PolitiFact, you got to update that, y'all.
I'm sure you don't know.
I'm doing y'all a public service. So here's what the excerpt in the letter. We don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs. Then PolitiFact goes on to say, Sanger's correspondence shows this sentence advocates for black doctors and ministers to play leadership roles in the Negro Project to avoid misunderstandings. Yeah, you don't say. Now, you know what's really funny?
What?
Is Planned Parenthood actually has a little sheet where they work to debunk all the anti-choice claims of people against Miss Sanger.
Oh.
And so they also quote her. We do not want, and it's the same quote, we do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. See, that's all they used in the quote. Sanger was aware of African American concerns passionately argued by Marcus Garvey in the 1920s that birth control was a threat to the survival of the black race. So in the 1920s, Marcus Garvey, who was a civil rights Pan-Africanist, was saying, hey, all this birth control stuff is not going to turn out good for our people. This is a way to exterminate us. And so Planned Parenthood says she was well aware of the fact that Marcus Garvey was a powerful voice in the black community that was telling us that this was going to this was going to contribute to exterminating us, and this was not a good thing for black people to embrace. And it's in that context that she says, we do not want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population.
Oh, man.
Now, you know what's interesting? Planned Parenthood, I expect this from Planned Parenthood because obviously they're slanted. They're not objective.
Right.
They don't pretend to be. They're Planned Parenthood.
Right, yeah.
Planned Parenthood, which was started by Miss Sanger, they're not going to be objective, so they have this little quote. I'm not mad at them, but PolitiFact
Yeah, but they
is supposedly
it's just about the facts.
the beacon of facts and objectivity.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting?
What?
They didn't quote the entire quote from Miss Sanger. They left out something extremely important. Here is what Miss Sanger actually said. This was in a 1939 letter to a Mr. Gamble, where she says, it seems to me from my experience in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas, that while the colored Negroes have great respect for white doctors, they can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their cards on the table, which means their ignorance, superstitions, and doubts. They do not do this with the white people, and if we can train the Negro doctor at the clinic, he can go among them with enthusiasm and with knowledge, which I believe will have far-reaching results among the colored people. Now, here, listen to what she says. The minister's work is also important. And also, he should be trained perhaps by the Federation as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea. Now that is actually where PolitiFact ends the quote. You will notice, my friends, that this is mid-sentence.
Yep.
There are a couple more words that PolitiFact just seemed to forget to quote. Shall you read the rest of them?
If ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
Why didn't you include that, PolitiFact? You know, the bit about the more rebellious members. Now, where does that come from? Where does the idea that a white person should employ a black minister to quell the rebellion of black people?
Sounds like slavery.
This was a common tactic during slavery, where you take the light-skinned fella whose mother was raped by the slave master of the previous generation, teach him to read, and then he'd open Ephesians 5 and do slaves be obedient to your masters.
Yep.
Because they understood that black people, this is just a human nature thing, that they would be more readily able to listen to a minister of their color in authority than a white person.
They would trust him more.
And he'd be more trustworthy. Notice she said, we got to find a charismatic minister who's trained with our ideals. So,
That's wild.
but PolitiFact
That
just
is
missed
terrible.
on the
Yeah,
rebellious
yeah.
part. Well, wait a second. What are they rebelling against?
Right.
Because I thought Margaret Sanger was out there trying to help us. You know, make sure that we were growing and developing and had opportunities for flourishing.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, she was referring to people like Marcus Garvey, which Planned Parenthood said was in her head. She was worried about people like Marcus Garvey stirring up them uppity, rebellious Negroes. And so this was a common tactic among the white slave master, is you find a black guy who's a minister, who has some vested authority, who then gets you in with the black community so that you can go and do whatever you need to do. So here we go. If you go back to the PolitiFact article, they're
you
like...
would think that somebody who, they pride themselves in their political facts, that they would understand structure of sentences, and that if they're a period or a question mark, exclamation point has not been reached, then the thought is incomplete.
At least what you do is you put an ellipses by it. You have a little dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
To indicate that there's more being said in the actual sentence.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even give us an ellipses, y'all.
No.
I mean, what in the world? You can look at the entire letter, oddly enough, at genius.com, and you can see it right there yourself. We don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. The minister is a man who can straighten out this idea if it occurs in their more rebellious members. So PolitiFact's proof that she wasn't a racist was the fact that she worked with black people.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Oh.
Of course she had to work with black people. How else was she going to do it? Well, which black people did she work with? She attracted an impressive roster of supporters, including Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois. You know, he is one of the stalwarts in the civil rights movement.
Okay.
You notice she wasn't very friendly with the big homie, Marcus Garvey.
Right. Yeah.
She wasn't friendly with him for some reason, but she was very friendly with Du Bois. And as a matter of fact, if you go to back to Planned Parenthood, so here we are, we're back on Planned Parenthood site now. Planned Parenthood actually has proof that she wasn't a racist. Do you know what their proof is?
No, what? What did they say?
Their proof is that here, in 1930, Sanger opened a family planning clinic in Harlem that sought to enlist support for contraceptive use and to bring the benefits of family planning to women. Staffed by a black physician and a black social worker. Well, we know why. We know why. The Abyssinian Baptist Church, we know why. She just told us why. She just told us why. See, this is the thing. Now, remember, Planned Parenthood did not quote the rest of "we need the minister to quell those rebellious Negroes." They didn't quote that. What they did was they said, "Oh well, there's a church. There's a church involved, and look, there's W.E.B. Du Bois."
Yeah, and the way they worded it too. And to bring the benefits of family planning to women who are denied access to their, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's because she was against segregation.
Wow.
Staffed by
so dishonest.
And then it's staffed, and then they say, staffed by a black physician and social worker. Yeah, that was her strategy in the Negro Project. That was the way she was going to countermand what Marcus Garvey was warning us against, because then they could say, "What do you mean this is against black people? Oh, it's a black doctor and it's a black minister." She said it explicitly in her letter. Okay, well here's the thing. Planned Parenthood told on themselves and they didn't really realize it. So they were able to crop out what she said in full in the other thing. But here's the thing. They then have a list of quotations that are attributed to Margaret Sanger that they are able to debunk and say that wasn't from Margaret Sanger. So look at this. The mass of ignorant Negroes still breed carelessly and disastrously, so that the increase among Negroes, even more than the increase among whites, is from that portion of the population least intelligent and fit and least able to rear their children properly.
Jesus.
Now that is usually attributed to Margaret Sanger. That's incorrect. She did not say that. You know who said that?
Who?
Scroll down. That was actually by W.E.B. Du Bois.
Well, I wonder where he got that.
Okay, so here's the thing. It was like, she's not racist. She worked with a pillar of the civil rights community, Mr. Du Bois. And then we look at what he says about black people. Listen, this is a common tactic used by white people against black people over and over and over again. You find the light-skinned black guy, that was Du Bois. And you use him as who is full of self-hatred and self-rejection, obviously. And you use him to countermand the voice of the actual black man, Marcus Garvey, to eliminate him, to eliminate his voice, to quell his voice. That's literally, so who did she choose to chair her Negro Project? Who is a token Negro on the Negro Project? W.E.B. Du Bois, who said this about black people.
Oh my gosh.
She didn't select Marcus Garvey for her Negro Project.
Nope.
What she did was she strategically selected ministers and civil rights activists who would go along and sell out with, and this is what PolitiFacts, now PolitiFact mentions W.E.B. Du Bois, does not quote this.
Right.
PolitiFact does not quote the full quotation, but they're supposed to be completely objective. Strange, isn't it? Strange. Yeah. Very strange to me. Well, here's the article in question. What was Miss...
I'm kind of bummed out because I was excited when you found that. You know, the false and true and pants on fire, and like I thought, oh, this is really cool. Like they're objective and blah, but that is not. They're clearly not being objective.
Yeah, obviously.
It's obviously not about the facts.
Now, what could possibly be their motivation for not being forthright and honest? Okay, now this is for all my, you know, some of these people are like flat earth, like science denying people.
Yeah.
Because you could show them right to their face and they'll deny it because they'll have Snopes. My friends, here's the actual New York Times article. You can see right here, the name of the article is Apostle of Birth Control Sees Cause Gaining Here. And you can see here, this is from New York Times. I actually had to buy a subscription to get access to their time machine thingamajig.
So old.
Here's the byline by Margaret Sanger, President, American Birth Control League. It was called the American Birth Control League before Planned Parenthood, but you didn't know that.
It was published on April 8th, 1923, on a Sunday.
Sunday! Page number 163, subjects, birth control, Sanger, Margaret. It's all there. You're seeing it on your screen right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit PDF, and I'm going to read you some of the things that she said in the New York Times in public. Okay? Granted, this is 1923. So this is the actual article, flat earthers. So I'll start from here. Succinctly and with telling brevity and precision, birth control summed up our whole philosophy. Birth control is not contraception indiscriminately and thoughtlessly practiced. Now, you would say, okay, birth control isn't indiscriminately and thoughtlessly practiced. Birth control is to give freedom to women. Or maybe it's birth control is designed to give women the opportunity to advance themselves. Because this is what Planned Parenthood is about. This is what she says is the goal of birth control in her own words. It means the release and cultivation of the better racial elements in our society. Woo! And the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extirpation of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization.
My gosh.
This is not a false article attributed to her. This is in the New York Times. If you get a subscription, you can get it now. It's only $8. I know. I did it. Let's continue. She goes on to say, to get the matter before the legislature of New York, my path has led completely around the earth. Our effort has been to enlist the support of the best minds of every country, an object we have achieved even beyond our fondest expectations. So she said, I had to go around the world to preach this message, and I've gotten a lot of support. Well, who are the best minds? Who are the best minds according to her? Well, here we go. The backbone of the birth control movement has been from the time Malthus, we're going to talk about Malthus in a second, first published his epic-making Principles of Populations, essentially Anglo-Saxon. Who are these best minds in her mind?
White people.
That were helping to further her movement of birth controls to extirpate, which basically means to pull up by the root these human weeds that were below her master racial strata. That's what she just said.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now she's a white lady. Who do you think the better racial elements of society were? And who do you think the lower elements, racial elements of society were in her mind in the 1920s? Well, she just told you the backbone of the movement is essentially Anglo-Saxon.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That means for the most part Anglo-Saxon. And since the first birth control clinic established in New York County was raided by the New York policemen in Brownsville some years ago and its founder sentenced to jail as petty miscreants, the whole current of opinion has advanced not merely in this country but throughout the world. Now watch this. The results of the intelligence tests. I guess you guys, well, what are you talking about? Intelligence tests. By the emergence of intelligence testing. The IQ test, particularly the absurdly culture-bound examination given to recruits during World War I, also served to underwrite the racism in the narrow sense. So, because it appeared to give empirical support to the view that the old stock or Nordic Americans were intellectually superior to recent immigrants.
Are they saying that they asked questions that were specifically?
Yeah, they were culture-bound questions. Yeah, so of course. So it just so happened that it appeared that oh shit, I can't help it. The Nordic people were just more intelligent.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what she's referring to.
That's bad, man.
Oh, this was missing in PolitiFact. Did you know it was missing?
Yeah.
Couldn't find it. PolitiFact. What happened? It's only $8 for the article. Hey, PolitiFact, email me and I will buy you a subscription. Because I'm sure you wanted to quote this woman in full. Mm-hmm. The results of the intelligence test. The menace of indiscriminate immigration. The menace of indiscriminate immigration. Now, can you imagine if Trump said that? We've got a menace of indiscriminate immigration.
Yeah.
It's got to stop. We've got to put an end to it. What would happen?
People would lose their minds.
You know, these liberals, you know.
Yeah.
They're so good at reading dog whistles. Mm-hmm. And they're able to hear things that normal people can't hear, but they can hear dog whistles. These are like subliminals that Trump puts out to white supremacists.
Right.
This is not a dog whistle. This is explicit. And she just said the menace of immigration. I don't believe that Miss Sanger only hated black people. I don't believe that she only thought she was superior to black people. Mm. She was a racist. Right. Doesn't mean that you're only look, racism is about superiority and inferiority. It's not about hate as in like I want to burn you at the stake.
Right.
It's about I'm superior to you.
Right. Right, and it's all over her writings.
The menace of indiscriminate immigration, the fertility of the unfit, and the increasing burden upon the healthful and vigorous members of American society of the delinquent and dependent classes, together with the growing danger of the abnormal fecundity of the feeble-minded, which means these mentally retarded people, they're abnormally fertile. They keep reproducing. So we need birth control. Because that will take care of the lesser races, it'll take care of immigration, and it'll take care of all these mentally retarded people. We call that ableism now. It's called ableism.
It's so wild how many people still have this thought process and they don't even know where it came from. Because you hear people saying all the time, oh, they should force sterilize people. There's some people that shouldn't have kids. Like you hear people say it all the time.
Yeah. Of course, in our modern day, a lot of these people are eugenists and they don't even know it.
Yeah.
And so they're okay with saying things like that. But here's something you guys don't realize. I'll explain something to you in a second about Miss Sanger's context. So the growing danger of the abnormal fecundity of the feeble-minded all emphasize the necessity of clear-sightedness and courageously facing the problem and the possibilities of birth control as a practical and feasible weapon against national and racial decadence. You know, decadence is just the decaying pursuit of pleasure. Mm-hmm. That's the idea. So it's these other races, they're pursuing sexual pleasure so much and they're reproducing like mad. The only thing that we can do to stop it as a weapon was birth control. She thought of birth control as a weapon to take care of both unfit people mentally and physically and lower races. Mm-hmm. She was a racist. She was an ableist. Yeah. That's what she was. It's clear.
Yeah.
And she said it out in public. Hey, let's pull back. She's a eugenist. She believes that there are two essential races. There's a master race and a lesser race. And she believes in the intelligence testing that Nordic people are just more intelligent than other races. She believes that people who are mentally retarded and physically unfit and racially inferior, we need to use birth control as a weapon to stymie their growth. This was in 1923. The letter she wrote about the uppity Negroes was in the 30s, the end of the 30s. So she already had this as her mindset. We're gonna recruit W.E.B. Du Bois and some coon preacher and some sellout church, and we're gonna go into your neighborhood and sterilize you. Or the next best thing, not sterilize you, the next best thing to do was to give you birth control to prevent you from having children.
Wow.
And then you got PolitiFact saying, well, she worked with black people. And look, she worked with black people to open clinics. And here's the other thing. Here's the thing that is absolutely hilarious to me about PolitiFact. Finally, in 1966, Planned Parenthood gave its Margaret Sanger Award to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the civil rights leader, accepted and sent his wife Coretta to accept. The speech he wrote for the occasion stated that there's a striking kinship between our movement and Margaret Sanger's early efforts. So this is literally what just happened. You notice how she said, oh, Du Bois, this is our Negro, this is our token Negro.
Yep.
So it's very interesting to me that PolitiFact quotes Dr. King, but does not quote another relative of King, which is Dr. Alveda King, who said this in 2010. Now, this PolitiFact article was written in 2015.
Oh.
So this had happened already. So it was there for public record.
Yep.
Listen to what Dr. Alveda King says about Planned Parenthood. The most obvious practitioner of racism in the United States today is Planned Parenthood, an organization founded by the eugenicist Margaret Sanger, and recently documented is ready to accept money to eliminate black babies.
Wow.
How come they didn't quote her? It's literally the same thing that happened.
Yeah.
So we're going to take our token Negro who said something nice, and let's forget about Dr. Alveda King who just said you guys are a racist institution. Isn't that interesting? Unbelievable.
Yeah, this is why you have Middle America.
This is why you have Middle America. Stop it. PolitiFact are written by people that have an obvious agenda. Now here's the last thing I'll say. PolitiFact, we're going to end with PolitiFact ironically enough. Cynthia Meyer says more black babies are born in New York City than born. So PolitiFact did their research, and here's what they found. According to the report, in 2013, black women accounted for 29,007 terminated pregnancies, representing almost 42% of all abortions in the city.
Jeez.
Black people account for 12 to 13% of the population, and we were accounted for 42% of all abortions in the city. That same year, black women in the city gave birth to 24,108 babies, with abortions surpassing live births by nearly 5,000. African American women in the city clearly terminated pregnancies more than they carried babies to term. Black women terminated pregnancies at a rate of 67.3 per 1,000, women ages 15 to 49, a rate far higher than any other racial or ethnic group. Ms. Sanger specifically targeted black communities and black ministers to initiate her birth control project, her Negro project, which Marcus Garvey said this is going to eliminate our people. You remember that?
Yeah.
And she marshaled W.E.B. Du Bois and her other coon ministers to silence Marcus Garvey. Well, it looked like Mr. Garvey is like a prophet right now.
Right. Because
you got 5,000 more deaths than live births. We checked the statistics were similar the previous year when African American women had 24,758 live births and underwent 31,328 abortions. 2 years in a row in New York City.
Wow.
Which, by the way, she started in Harlem and Brooklyn in the previous article. This is ground zero. This is Mecca for Planned Parenthood. So it seems to me that those uppity Negroes, those rebellious Negroes that she wanted to silence were actually right, huh? The numbers for black women in New York City starkly contrasted with women in other racial and ethnic categories. And last but not least, I'm skipping here, while white women accounted for the most births overall and the second fewest abortions. Isn't that interesting? Huh? New York City, which is where she started all this stuff, in Harlem and all the rest of it? Why was she in Harlem? A little white lady doing in Harlem in the 20s. What's a little white lady doing in Harlem in the 20s? In New York City, here we are. This is in the 1920s, and here we are, almost 100 years later, and the fruits of Miss Sanger's work is clearly here. More black babies aborted than born. She wanted to use, and white women just so happen to have more births than abortions. Most births, second fewest abortions. Interesting. Now, it's long been reported that Planned Parenthood targets minority communities. And of course, the Guttmacher Institute, which is essentially the reporting arm of Planned Parenthood, published a finding that said, no, that's not true. As Miss Moore states, this is from thefederalist.com, fewer than 1 in 10 abortion providers are in majority black neighborhoods. Well, that settles it. Fewer than 1 in 10 abortion providers are in black neighborhoods. But the article goes on, this statistic is spurious because black Americans comprise only 12% of the U.S. population. Relatively few areas in America are majority black. By neighborhood, Guttmacher means zip code. Only 2 to 4% of U.S. zip codes have a majority black population. Only 3% of counties have a majority black population. Using Guttmacher's own findings, however, almost 10% of America's high-volume abortion clinics, performing more than 400 abortions per year, exist in those majority black zip codes. Think about that. 2 to 4% of U.S. zip codes are majority black, but almost 10% of their high-volume abortion clinics are in those zip codes. Clinics in neighborhoods where non-whites are the majority, only around 15% of U.S. neighborhoods, make up 40% of all abortion clinics in the United States. Let's say that again. Clinics in neighborhoods where non-whites are the majority, only around 15% of U.S. neighborhoods make up 40% of all abortion clinics in the United States. That's called disproportionality. This means that even under Guttmacher's own showing, abortion clinics are indeed disproportionately found where the local population is predominantly minorities. And what did PolitiFact just read you? Black women and Hispanic women are more likely to abort their children than white women are at a disproportionate rate. Why is that? I don't know. What do you think? She stated clearly what her mission was. She said it explicitly. She didn't mince words. She had a plan. She was in a certain context. Here's what we have. PolitiFact did not quote the full quote when she was talking about rebellious Negroes. They left that out. PolitiFact left out, so did Planned Parenthood, left out an article she wrote in 1923 where she explicitly invoked Malthus. She explicitly invoked the intelligence test. She explicitly said she was xenophobic. She said the menace of immigration. She explicitly talked about racial strata, higher racial strata and lower racial strata. PolitiFact and Planned Parenthood mentioned none of that. It's also clear that she marshaled black people to nullify the voice of Marcus Garvey. Now, thankfully to Planned Parenthood, they did mention that. PolitiFact didn't mention that at all. This is who she was. And the fruits of her labor are mathematically clear. Now, I read this I said, hey, we killed more black babies than were born. I don't care, he said.
Yeah.
Don't care. So when Hillary Clinton and all the rest of the pussy hat wearing, and look, this, and I want to pull back. This is not about black people only. In Iceland has essentially, this woman went all over the world. Iceland has essentially eliminated Down syndrome from their populace. China, up until recently, had a one-child policy. It was absolutely brutal. She was there. So this is not just about she was bad to black people. Because some people are fine with the fact that she was ableist as long as you don't call her a racist. She was obviously a racist. She obviously was. But she has had an impact literally across the globe, and she was proud of it. Preaching this gospel of killing people for having defects and being unfit. Now, like I said, a lot of the elites of her time had that mindset. But they didn't tread across the world. They didn't jump on airplanes and to spread this all over the place. And for Hillary Clinton and for the women's movement to hail this woman as a hero means either they're completely ignorant of basic facts, or they're too cheap to buy a New York Times subscription, or they knew it and they didn't want you to know it. Love your neighbor.
Take care of each other.
Don't kill people, even if they're weaker than you. Even if they don't look like you, you shouldn't kill them. You should love them. Middle America.
We are the media.
Till next time, guys.